basically started half of Google's businesses globally. Again, enormous privilege. I always say it's the second best job on the planet. And that life ends at the moment where my wonderful son Ali leaves our world. We take him to a hospital. It's an appendix inflammation. Very simple surgery. But then the surgeon does 5 mistakes in a row and Ali leaves our world. There are organizations out there that are simply out there to use you as a product. It was effective when there was no other technology.
Because education is free and available on the internet.
Millions of teachers and administrators and so on that are paid for the current system. It's a bureaucracy.
Which is flawed.
And for the first time ever, humanity at large are opening their eyes and saying, what? Did you lie to me about JFK? Did you lie to me about 9/11? Did you lie to me about the Epstein file? I never watch the news, just understand that. But I watch deep analysis on that they claim is the news.
We're lucky to be alive at this point.
So for the next 12 to 15 years, I think the world is going to be very unfamiliar.
So this is 22? 23? لا, it should warm up. I saw you twice, if I'm not mistaken. The first time was at Sync Summit في الشرقية في خبر at ITHRA.
Yes.
You remember how beautiful that space was?
That was incredible.
I mean, really, one of my favorite
event
projects.
Was really wonderful.
They're very good at what they do. They had their Sync event in Riyadh a month ago, and really, yani, they managed to. They had a collab with the Saudi Space Agency, and I can't emphasize just how well they do it. These are
they really
people.
are. And I'm speaking at ISRA tomorrow.
All right,
Yeah,
all right, amazing. And then رائعين جدا. Yeah.
So tomorrow is going to be a shocking talk. So
I want to come watch. What do we have tomorrow? Tomorrow's a free day. Okay, we'll talk.
3 o'clock, I think.
Okay. All right. Well, without further ado, Mo, I've been following your content for many, many years.
Big mistake.
He's going to crack me up throughout the entire episode. You come with a fresh angle. I was so proud to see someone who came from the world of Google in such a high position from the Arab world. So right off the bat, and I'm sure you get this a lot, we're so proud of the world you came from and what you're doing now in the world of AI. You want to say something?
No, I was just saying thank you for that.
You're so welcome. My pleasure. I wrote a little short paragraph, and I think it's only right that I do read it off. A man whose work and words have really touched millions around the world in many, many ways in life, at Google and after. The former chief business officer at Google X and best-selling author, and one of the most influential thinkers on happiness, love, and now AI. I want to don't even have to introduce him. You know him when you see him on screen. Mo Gawdat.
Yeah, thank you.
I don't read many books.
Good for you.
But
I don't either, believe it or not.
I want to, Mo. I want to read physical books. I'm sick of screen, especially with the world of podcasting. My screen time has gone up. I was in the airport in Riyadh, leaving back to Jeddah, and on the shelf at, I think it was Jarir, Solve for Happy. I was like, I can use that. What is that? I grabbed it, flipped through it, bought it, and it's probably the 4th book that I've finished in my life. And the first couple of chapters touched me so much, unexpected. I'm in there, trying to find happiness. And the first 2 chapters was about Allah yarhamu, Ali, and I just couldn't put the book down, coming for a non-reader. Thank you for being so open and vulnerable in that book. And I have a staple question that I like opening with, Mo. You can go anywhere you want to with it, which is, why do you, Mo, do what you do?
So first of all, thank you very much. Soul for Happy has a bit of my soul in it. Like literally, it has a slice of my soul in it. And so when I feel that it reached someone, I feel so rewarded. And Soul for Happy is the reason why I do what I do. I lived 2 full lives, if you want. Many more if you look at the details, but at the macro picture, I lived the life of the, I call it the everyday warrior, someone that goes to the corporate world, learns about money and finance, becomes very, very successful. I'm an engineer by training, a computer scientist by passion. And I was born a mathematician, if you want. So until today, everything I see in numbers. It's a very weird place in here. And that mix, a bit like Malcolm Gladwell speaks about in Outliers, was perfectly suited for the environment I graduated in. So I worked at IBM and then at Microsoft and then at Google at the time when those companies were changing the world. And at Google, I went really far. For 7 years, I was vice president of emerging markets. So I basically started half of Google's businesses globally. And that wasn't just a sales office. That was the tech itself, the language understanding, the establishment of the infrastructure of the internet, the establishment of the concept of e-commerce in those markets. What a privilege, really. And then when the business became more steady, I'm more of a startup kind of person, so I moved to Google X. Google X is the innovation factory of Google, and we did lots of amazing things there. I was chief business officer, so a big chunk of what I was attempting to do is to take this incredible genius that we had at Google X and build things that actually land in the real world. And so, again, enormous privilege. I always say it's the second best job on the planet, right? And that life ends at the moment where my wonderful son Ali leaves our world. Ali, Bibi, at the time, he was 21 and a half. Ali, he was anything that a father would dream of a son to become. He was tall and handsome and funny as hell. Very kind, very generous, very tender, very loving, very wise, like painfully wise. And I can remember vividly that when he lived in Boston like you did for a while. At the time he was studying in Northeastern University, and he so he was in a band and they were planning to tour the US at the time. And for some reason he calls us and says, I feel compelled, his exact words, I feel compelled to come and see you before the tour. And so I immediately buy him a ticket. He flies over. My daughter Aya is here as well. So, it's like this family get together. We spend a couple of days together and then he gets this belly ache. We take him to a hospital. It's an appendix inflammation. Very simple surgery. But then the surgeon does 5 mistakes in a row and Ali leaves our world. And so you may think of this as the end of a father's life, and you wouldn't blame me if you had hugged him once. You wouldn't blame me if it was that way. It was the start of my second life, if you want. So Ali leaves. My daughter comes to me 4 days later. She says he had a dream that he was everywhere and part of everyone. Which, if you sort of understand spirituality reasonably well, that basically means you've disconnected from the limits of the physical world. Your soul is not judged or governed by time or space. And so if you're outside of the physical limits of your physical form, you're everywhere. You can see everything. And if you return back to the source, to God, then you're at the source of where all the spirits or all of the souls come from. Then you're part of everyone. And, I only understood that, believe it or not, 6 or 7 years after he left. When he when she told me that he had that dream and told her about it, my very blurry mind, this was 4 days after I lost my son, my blurry mind thought of it as a quota, as if it's my son who in many, many ways was my teacher in so many ways, was giving me a target, was saying, make me everywhere and part of everyone. And at the time, as I said, I was running Google. So everything I did was with the intention of reaching billions of people. And I knew how to do that. And so I found myself sitting down, of course I cried. And then Aya heard me say, of course, Habibi, consider it done. I'll make you everywhere and part of everyone. And that basically meant that I needed to take Ali's essence, whatever made him who he is. And my devious plan was to put that in a book, make that book successful enough so that people who read it tell others about it. And hopefully through 6 degrees of separation, a tiny, tiny, tiny part of his essence will move from you to someone else, to someone else, to someone else. And eventually Ali will be everywhere and part of everyone. And so that book was Solve for Happy, which was the summary of the journey I lived with Ali at the times where I had my first life. So in my first life, I was extremely successful. Like I was printing money on demand. I had everything that everyone dreams of.
Google days.
Even before Google. In my early 20s, because of my programming and math abilities, 1996, I wrote a piece of code before Google that would scout the internet for insider information about stocks. And basically does the mathematics of technical analysis on every stock chart. And every morning I'd wake up in the morning and my code would have run overnight after the market closes in the US to recommend to me 4 buys and 4 sells. And I was literally printing money on demand. I remember once my wonderful wife, then she's now my ex, but still wonderful, would come to me and say, we need to change the car. And I'm like, yeah, what are you looking for? And she says, I need this, and let's buy this. And I was like, oh, that's going to have to be Wednesday, because the market opens Monday. I trade on Monday and Tuesday, and the money is available Wednesday. This was just a joke, honestly. And at the time I was so miserable, and it's really a testimony to what the nature of happiness is, that I just couldn't go on. And Ali was the one that basically helped me understand the reality of happiness. My mathematical brain would think of it algorithmically, and then I would go to him and explain what I understand, and he would look at me and entertain me with a couple of questions as if he's interested, and then would tell me, you could have asked me, I know that stuff in my heart. And so he would tell it to me in a way that, a normal human, not a math machine, would understand. And so when he left our world, I just had to write what he taught me down. I mean, I was driven by that idea of making him everywhere and part of everyone. But I was also driven by the idea of not forgetting what he taught me. And so Solve for Happy became a mega bestseller. I think we're approaching 1 million copies by now. And I left Google. And I started something that I call 1 billion happy. And I wake up every morning attempting to make a few people happier, or attempting to remove a reason for unhappiness in the world. And between those two, you asked me, why do I do what I do? I mean, what better could you do in life? My wonderful Aya, my daughter, one day came to me and said, you should know that God paid you in advance. I was like, what do you mean? And she said, you're, and it's true. Huh? I'm born and raised in Egypt, public school, public university in Egypt. You don't get to be chief business officer Google X with that, honestly, right? I was born with this math abilities and technical abilities. And then I went so far, way beyond what I deserve, if you want. And Aya is so clever. Huh? She comes and she says, you've been paid in advance. You're going to be assigned the duty to pay back what you've been given. And to be very, very honest, I honestly have not worked a single day since. I wake up in the morning, I think deeply about a topic, put it on the pages of a book, and people read it. Can you imagine the privilege of putting your thoughts on paper and someone reads it, right? And then I travel the world and meet wonderful people like you, and go speak at at important events, and it's just been a dream, to be honest. That's why I do it.
Was it easier to deal with your loss in the years that unfolded after Ali's passing? Was year 0 the hardest, year 1 a little easier, or has it all been extremely challenging from then until now?
Wow. What a question. It's been the hardest thing ever. I think it's the hardest thing a loving father would ever feel until this minute. So every time, most people don't know this, every time you bring up Ali, I feel a physical pain right here. It's physical. It's almost like, I always say that the bottom right-hand side of my heart is missing. And I pinpoint it. I know exactly where it is. It's so weird. But it's been the best thing that ever happened. Believe it or not, since the minute he left, myself and his wonderful mother, Nibel is a very, very, very loving person, and Ali was everything. And she's emotional, and she's delicate, and she's feminine. And both of us, Habibti, when he died, she said, take me to him. And I said, no, I don't advise that. She said, just take me to him. Okay, I need to say goodbye. And so she walks into the intensive care room. He's gone. And what does she say? She kisses him on the forehead and says, Habibi, you're finally home. You're finally home. That is so true. This angel wasn't from here. He was not from here. Okay. And by the way, we all know that this is not home.
No.
This is just a passage where, you stop under a tree for a while. And that eventually, when you give up on your physical form, that's where real home is. And it's so interesting because, I'm born Muslim. I, studied Islam very deeply, and in a very interesting way, we know deep inside us that there is a big gift if you lose a child and you're steady and you're sort of accepting and you don't rebel against the divine and curse everything and why me and all of that. And I can easily tell you, I'm very stoic in my nature, but I couldn't imagine that Nibel wouldn't go there. But some kind of weird blessing just came onto both of us in a very unusual way. We literally, not for a second, were disgruntled about it. So the pain that we feel is the pain of missing him, which is an incredible sign of how much we love him, right? But we don't feel that we were betrayed by life. We don't feel that this doctor is evil. We don't feel that we never did, okay? And you have to question that, because in my physics mind, I had to start thinking about the interesting sequence of events in the world. You can look at events in your life and think of them in chronological order. Like, I landed in Riyadh, and then I drove here, and then I met you. Okay? That's the chronological unfolding of events that the human brain understands. But if you think deeper, you can think of things in causality, in causal order. So someone needs to hear what I'm about to say, and so accordingly, I ended up here to meet you, and accordingly you ended up, or we were introduced by Sarah, and so how, and if you think of fate as one of the threads through which things happen, then almost the same day, I was so surprised by my car. Okay, I was even more surprised by Nibal's car, and I had to tell myself maybe that promise, and I still pray that every day, that promise that if you lose a child, he's gonna hold your hand and take you to heaven when you leave as well. Maybe if you think about it from a causality point of view, in the absence of time, that has already happened. Okay, and because it happened, I had to stay calm. Do you understand?
Absolutely.
And Nibal had to stay calm. We had no choice because that's already written in space-time. Okay, and or beyond life is not space-time, but it's already written in fate, if you want. And it blew my mind that until today, I never had a minute where I said, "Why did you do this? Why did you take him?"
9 out of 10 would have gone in that direction.
Yeah, but that's a misunderstanding of the reality of life.
Yeah.
I'll tell you openly. I mean, in Solve for Happy, actually, I discussed that from a physics point of view. You see, the problem is you may hang on to faith. And you tell yourself, I believe that when we die, things happen this way. Okay? This is one way of knowing. Another way of knowing is to have witnessed something. And the best way to witness anything is through mathematics. Okay? And if you understand the mathematics of space-time, the work of Einstein, for example, is very important to understand that all of space and all of time has already been written. Okay? All of space and all of time has already happened.
Is that the space-time continuum?
That's the space-time continuum. So the idea, and this is not woo-woo, this is proven with practical experiments. You can cut space-time in slices that look very unusual, and they are real. If you're approaching planet Earth at a very high speed in a spaceship, and you're approaching from Japan, for example, you'd see the world, say, in 1940 in Japan, in the year 1990 in the Middle East, and in the year 2025 in America, right? And all of that becomes your slice of time. And that slice of time is real for you because all of it is documented in space-time, right? If you understand that basically means that all of time already exists, which means there is no before and after, right? Before and after is just a point on the space-time continuum as per our human commitment to the arrow of time. Right? The only way we can move through space-time is through the chronological order of time, right? But Einstein proves that this is not the only way you can see it, that like space, like I can move in this room and go anywhere I want, there are ways where time is not fixed as an arrow, okay? When you think of it this way, then Ali wasn't born after me, and he didn't die before me, okay? So basically that means that Ali's physical form, which abides by space-time, was born after me, and Ali's physical form decayed before mine, right? If also you understand a tiny bit of quantum physics, and you take this story that I always say it's a story because science constantly changes, but it's our best story, if you want, that the universe was one mass that exploded in the Big Bang, and then for 9 billion years it was just gases, and then those gases consolidated into galaxies and planets and so on. Earth happens 4.3 billion years ago, and then life itself is just a few million years old. Now, that's a beautiful scenario to understand, but you go to quantum physics, and quantum physics will tell you that without being observed by a form of life, nothing exists, right? So unless there was a form of life observing the Big Bang explosion, the 9 billion years of gases, there wouldn't ever be a galaxy that forms because it wouldn't be observed. Okay, there wouldn't be ever Earth because Earth wouldn't be observed to exist. Okay, which basically means that life existed before the physical universe, and will exist after the physical universe.
Irrespective of when humanity entered the frame.
100%, right? And when you think of it this way, you start to realize that death is not the opposite of life.
Oh my God, that's so profound.
Death is the opposite of birth. So if you think of this space-time continuum, if you think of the role you play in this physical world as a video game, then you come into this level of the game through a portal called birth. You leave this level of the game through a portal called death. But life exists during, before, and after. Okay? And when you see it that way, you start to realize that there is only one fact. I have absolutely no certainty whatsoever that I'll make it out of this room. I could fall, dead right now. Okay? And every one of us, plays with that roll of a dice, if you want. Nobody knows when we're going to leave. But you know what? The only certainty you have is you are going to leave.
Yeah.
Right? And it's so weird. It's almost like the minute you sign the lease of life, you've already signed in the same agreement that you're going to die. Right? And so I know for a fact that I, sooner or later, will be where Ali is. And you know where Ali is? Where he has always been. Before he played this level of the game. Where I have always been as I'm playing this level of the game. When I'm talking about I'm talking about the real me. Okay? If you're a religious person, you would think this is a soul. Okay? If you're not a religious person, you'd think this is your form of consciousness. Okay? And both beliefs, sort of converge on the idea of the source, all of the souls coming from the soul of God, or universal consciousness, that all of consciousness is universal, is fundamental, is where everything comes from, right? Either way, me and Ali are sitting on a red sofa somewhere watching this space-time continuum, okay? And that gives you a very different perspective of death, a very different perspective that life is the anomaly. Life on this planet is the anomaly, that death, which is in our definition as physical beings, is the end of the physical form. That's the norm. Your true reality is you can live 80, 100 years in space-times, right? In a physical form. But once you're outside space-time, you're not abiding by time at all. And so you live infinitely in your non-physical form, your conscious form or your spiritual form. And I know that in my heart, it hurts that I will never hug Ali in his physical form again. But I also know that I was never physical, neither was he. And so if you really think deeply about it, it's a bit like a very weird video game where, and Ali and I played a lot of video games. He was a legend. Now I am, by the way, because I honored everything that he did after he left.
What was his favorite game?
He played a ton of games, but when we played together, we played Halo.
Okay.
And so I still play Halo, and I'm one of the best in the world at Halo. So of every million players, probably 2 have the chance to beat me. They don't always, but they have the chance.
I did not know that about you.
Yeah, I'm a very serious gamer, and I'm very rude when in my gaming persona. But listen to this. In games, when we used to play a campaign together, Ali and I, he was a much better player than I am, right? And so when we encountered a very complex part of the game where it became very challenging, Ali would jump in first, kill 90% of the enemies, and be killed. So he would leave the game, right? And because he set it up, I could then walk in and kill the remaining 10%, and then he would respawn and we continue the game. Think of that metaphor. Because in a very interesting way, I don't know if you believe that, but I believe that we all get asked if we're done with the game. Okay. And, those who really cling on to life, they stay longer and longer and longer until their physical form decays while they're alive. And, when they get asked, they go like, yeah, it's not working anymore. Right. But that's a belief. I have no scientific proof of that. But I too had a near-death experience in my life. And all of the documentation of the near-death experiences that we have more than 3 million documented cases of near-death experiences. And my experience was exactly the same. You go through a tunnel, you meet a lot of people, you're sort of almost reviewing your life very quickly, and then you're sort of, ejected into a stillness of a very, very immersive white light, okay? And then you start to meet people that you love, and everything that you feel there is love. And it's quite interesting because then they brought me back and I was very angry. Like, why did you bring me back? This was heaven, right? I don't mean it literally, but it was so beautiful. Huh? And if you think of it this way, the way I see it is that Ali was playing the video game and he decided to sacrifice himself, or life or God chose to have him sacrifice himself so that the rest of the mission is completed. And I don't know how to say that because, of course, my wonderful Ali, to my heart, is more important than everything. But since Ali, we've reached 80 million people with a message that changed their life. Like between Solve for Happy and my work on artificial intelligence with Scary Smart, Unstressable is extremely powerful and empowering in a very stressful world. And all of the podcasts that we've done and all of the, we're a tiny team, 4 people. And we've reached probably 80. I mean, we definitely reached more than 100 million people, but we reached at least 80 that took action. Okay. And I keep thinking about it, that if Ali Habibi was going into the operating room, and if you knew Ali, and I had asked him and I said, Habibi, you can walk in for 5 minutes, then come out and live the rest of your life. Or you can walk in for 5 minutes and leave this physical universe. And as a result, 80 million people's lives would be affected positively. Which do you think he would have chosen? I have absolutely no doubt in my mind that he would have said, kill me now. Why go into the operating room? And think of it this way, huh? This is, in my mind, if this physical universe is not life, this is just a level of the video game, then he made the best move on the game board by far. Okay? Because if this physical universe is about the oneness of all of us and how all of us can help each other, and if it's a short journey regardless, if he had lived 40 years more or 40 years less, I mean, both you and I know, it passes like that.
It's like that.
Right. But imagine a life with such impact. Imagine a life where you get the promise that if you leave, you're in a better place. I have to say it's shocking. You asked me, has it been challenging? It's still the most challenging thing on earth. Okay? I mean, I rarely ever get the thought of him and not cry. But it's the biggest blessing that ever happened.
Fair to assume that if Ali was still here, you wouldn't have gone on to produce 380.
Absolutely not.
You would not, because you mentioned...
Absolutely not. I would have never left Google. I would have never spoken out about AI. I would have never written any books at all. I would have continued to sell billion-dollar deals and build interesting technologies and move from one job to the other and get $100 million this and, grant of that stock or whatever, and lived a life that was as empty as the Ferraris that filled it, and that would have been it.
His death, in turn, changed the world, changed the trajectory of your life, and that's why you mentioned you had 2 lives.
Yeah, it changed my life for a fact. Okay, and if you believe that each and every single one of us changes the world, because somehow Western mentalities think of life purpose as the big thing, the one that's going to do something, the hero journey. It's not. Every one of us changes the lives of everyone you interact with, a tiny bit. Okay, again, you and I today may just deliver a message to someone who's been grieving and thinking that they lost their loved one, when in reality they haven't. In reality, it's just I always say, Ali, when he was in Boston, we're men, so we didn't have those many, like, we loved each other deeply, but we would text once every couple of days, Habibi, are you okay? Yeah. I'm okay, father. Thank you so much. Yeah. Right. And we would talk every week, every 10 days, once, again, short call. Habibi, do you need anything? Le papa, I'm okay. And then we would meet every 6 months. I'd hug him, and that makes my life. Not my day, not my week. It makes my whole life. And when he left and I was very happy. I didn't see him enough. We didn't communicate enough, but I was very happy because he was happy. He was living well. He was pursuing his purpose, right? And that's what a father wants. I think of his death now and I go like, well, he's a little bit further than Boston for a little longer. Okay? But he's happy. What else would a father want? Okay? He's happy. He has realized a purpose. That I believe is a privilege. It's a privilege. I mean, most people think that making millions or getting stock options or being, I was a celebrity in Silicon Valley. People think of that as achieving. That's hollow. It's empty. This is what life is all about. Honestly, if you manage to make one person happier, okay, if you manage to get one person to think differently, if you manage to save one life, that's it. Your life was worthwhile.
Is that what pushes you to keep going?
I don't know. Honestly, Amo, I really don't know. I've been thinking so deeply about this because I have to admit, I had a very interesting strategy. Our original mission statement for 1 billion happy, the attempt that we're trying to achieve, our original mission statement was that we were going to enable 1 million people to make 1 billion people happy. And then I was going to lose all the money I made in my Google years in the process. And then we will all be forgotten, which is very, very key to the success of 1 billion happy, because you can imagine if I managed to progress on that mission from 80 million to 250 million, there will be quite a few interested parties that don't like Middle Easterns to succeed that will somehow try to frame me. Okay? And if the mission is about me, then we failed. Okay? And so very early in the strategy, you look at my Instagram, for example. I have 300,000 followers. I'm so blessed that there are 300,000 people that want to hear what I say. But my podcast appearances would be listened to 12 million times, 14 million times. But they're on other people's platforms, which was entirely what we were attempting to do. We were trying to say, I don't matter. I am a piece of shit. Okay? What matters is this message. And if this message resonates with you, tell others about it. Okay? Tell it yourself. You don't even have to forward my message. If you want to, welcome. But tell it yourself. And so you have so many people out there that would take some of my work in Solve for Happy or Unstressable or, Scary Smart, or take something that I covered in a speech or in a podcast, and they speak about it themselves, right? So there is that momentum happening where 1 million happy are trying to sponsor 1 billion happy. Okay, 1 million responsible humans are engaging to sponsor 1 billion responsible humans, and it's quite interesting because then I start to tell myself, and if I stop now and disappear altogether, that's completely aligned with the strategy. Okay, but somehow, because of Aya's words of you've been paid in advance, I decided to hand over the decision of my disappearance, if you want, to the big designer. Okay. So when I'm done, nobody's going to ask me for me to be on a podcast anymore. And so, great. I'll just sit at home, take care of my plants and do my carpentry and restore more classic cars that I lose money on, and everything will be fine. Okay. And until then, as long as you're interested to have a conversation with me, I'll keep going. Right. Until then, as long as there is something that's burning in my heart that I want to put on paper and have people read. I was actually flying here, and I'm in the middle of one of my favorite books ever called Alive. And suddenly it just hit me that there is this book that I wrote around 2018, but never published. But now I'm so keen to publish it. And I told myself, maybe if I just take a month off writing Alive and sit down, this other book is called Half Monk. Such an interesting idea of how you can be purpose-driven and service-driven and well-being focused while you're still a soldier in the mainstream world, if you want, trying to make a difference to the world, right? And I just, when I get those inspirations, I'll sit down and write them, okay? And if someone reads them, great. If I'm supposed to stop, then maybe I won't get those inspirations anymore, or maybe I won't be able to type anymore, right? Until then, I'm just trying. I keep trying.
What do you enjoy doing most?
I enjoy deep thinking. So I'm somewhere between a learner and a maker. And it's actually very interesting for everyone who's listening. It's so interesting when you manage to define yourself by one word. Okay? Not a word of ego. Not a personality that you assume, a word of how you actually live your life. So I find that my biggest joy are when I'm sitting to learn. My biggest joys are when I'm sitting to learn something I don't know, okay, or when I'm actually making something with my own hands. This is why I continue to wear an overall and go to my workshop every Saturday. Yeah, and literally get covered with dust and oil and, get my hands dirty, right? I've just cut one of my fingers when I was doing carpentry day before yesterday. But it's these are things that are so core. One of the funny things, I was talking to my ex about Emma. Emma is my AI love coach, if you want.
We're going to get into her.
Yeah. And I was talking to Emma, and she asked me, like, so, what are things that you find enriching, and, what would you do in your free time? And I was like, damn, I'm so boring. Oh my God, like, no one should ever date me, ever. And I actually literally texted my ex today and said, how did you put up with me? Like, I'm so boring. When I'm not working, I'm taking notes as I watch a very complex video on YouTube, or I'm carrying heavy stuff and building things and fixing cars, and like, that is horrible. Like,
do you actually install the parts?
Yeah. I'm a very serious mechanic.
I think the next time I have you on the show, I want to just talk to you about cars, because it's a part of my life that I absolutely adore. And maybe towards the end we'll speak about cars. So you actually do the manual work?
100%.
The welding,
No, I'm not that good.
Okay.
But I understand engines very well, and suspensions. I of course, a lot of the work in classics is body work and interior and stuff like that. I'm not as much as I used to be when I was younger. When I was in my early 20s and late teens, I actually made cars with my own hands, and I would buy several, salvage cars and put them together, and, take an engine from here and a suspension from there and a transmission from here. And I just loved it. And it's actually, again, it's so interesting for everyone listening, is if you can define that one thing that you constantly are unable to do, to stop doing, then that actually describes the real you. And, in a very interesting way, when I was in my corporate career, people would ask me, so, what's your life's purpose? And I'm like, yeah, my life's purpose is to enable startups in emerging markets to build technology that rivals Google. Crap. absolute crap. It's like, I was basically repeating the slogans that Harvard Business Review was putting in my head.
It's very rehearsed.
Yeah, no, but I believed it. That's the problem.
You believed in it, yeah.
I believed it, and the truth is, I'm a maker, and if you just leave me alone, literally, I'm a highly introverted, which I know most of my followers don't believe. Highly introverted, and if you leave me alone, I'll disappear somewhere and make everything from scratch. Start from chipping stones all the way until I make a supercomputer, and I would absolutely love every minute of it.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm just looking at the art of carpentry, or the art of working on classic cars, or the art of writing. They're all single player games.
They're all single player.
So do you take solace in the fact that all those are therapeutic activities? Do you feel more refreshed when you're coming out of it?
Oh my God, yes. So these are all also, restoration of cars, you have to work in teams,
okay.
but it's a very quiet job, right? We all sort of look at each other and go like, yeah, that's the converter. Like, it's clear who's going to do this. Okay. And then when they leave me, I'm not going to speak to anyone. I'll just speak to the car, really. Writing is very, very introverted. Carpentry is horrendously introverted. And all of my handcrafts, I draw portraits, and, I play music, and all of them are very introverted. But that's also important for everyone to understand, is that, introvert is not shy. It's not socially awkward. An introvert is someone that gets his energy from alone time, okay, or high quality one-to-one time, or one to very few time. An extrovert is someone that gets his energy from social interactions, right? And one of the top books on the topic was Quiet by Susan Cain. Susan Cain. Quiet was really a shout out for introverts, if you want, because she was basically saying that those introverts are the ones that normally spend a lot of time creating new things and inventing new things, because they feel drained when they are in social situations, not because they lack social skills, but because they are highly empathetic. So if you're an introvert by nature, that means when you're in public, you're paying attention to every social cue and every facial, expression, and every body movement, and every tone of a voice. And that takes a lot of your energy and processing power when you're with multiple people.
Interesting.
Right? And so to recharge, you have to tell yourself, you know what, I need my alone time. No right and wrong, by the way. Introverts have their place in the world, and extroverts have their place in the world. But a recurring dream for me, and it's more and more showing up in my life now, is I really want to find a farm somewhere in the world and start from basic materials and build my own home and, farm my own land. And, maybe I take one person with me, but probably not. And yeah, I don't know if you know about that, but I do 40 days of silence every year away from the world. I do a mini silent retreat every other Sunday. These are extreme. I know it sounds extreme, and most people who are extroverted would think this is crazy. But believe it or not, they are my recharge opportunities. They are where I get my best thoughts, and I organize most of my mess. And it's wonderful.
How silent is your every other Sunday?
Every other Sunday is a very interesting exercise. So I set my alarm clock to 3 p.m. So silence to me is avoiding all human interaction, avoiding all information interaction. And so basically I allow myself to listen to music, no lyrics. I allow myself to take notes. I allow myself to write. But I don't look at timepieces. I don't, answer my phone. I don't, I could go out and just ask for a coffee, but that's really not an interaction. And basically the whole idea is that you allow your mind the space to start expressing itself openly, not in a scattered way, and hopefully that you actually listen. Okay. And when you do, miracles happen. So by 3 p.m., I wake up when I wake up, usually at 6 a.m., but maybe that day it's 7, I don't know. I'm not looking at the timepiece. And I'm in silence until my alarm says enough silence. And usually I sort of almost kick the alarm. It's like, why? Why now?
Because you were loving that space.
It's the best space on the planet. 40 days is the ultimate experience. Ultimate experience.
Intense.
It's not at all. It's not at all. So I don't do it, like they do in a monastery where I go somewhere and the monk wakes me up at 4 a.m. in the morning. If the monk wakes me up at 4 a.m. in the morning, it's going to be a very bad day, right? If someone tells me it's time to meditate, I'm not going to meditate. It's as simple as that, right? So what I do is I go to a beautiful place in nature. And yeah, the first 3 to 4 days, it's intense because your brain's trying to go like, that's 40 days. Like we must have forgotten something. And I'm like, you're really not that important. Honestly, you're fine. And yeah, I do allow myself 10 minutes to check for urgency of messages, every other morning or whatever. But the whole idea is that 40 days is actually really very frequently described in spiritual practices and scriptures, and most of what we know about people who ever found anything, they found it in silence.
Yeah, you hear about the 40-day detox.
Yeah,
something
exactly.
that's been around. Let me fix that. I said intense because I can't go an hour in silence mode.
Is that true?
So yeah. I'm very, very elementary in the whole world of meditation, of journaling. I think my listeners are sick and tired of me saying this is the year. So
you have to understand, meditation is not what they tell you it is at all. Okay, meditation is all about. So most people think that meditation is about silencing your mind. Believe it or not, when I started to get to 96, so I in my later days, I used to meditate using a device that measured my brain activity. Okay. And when I started to get to the point where my meditations were getting to 96% silent or calm, basically, I stopped.
Is this device measuring your thoughts?
No, it's measuring your brain activity. It's measuring if your brain is wandering or if you're single focused.
Attempting not to think of anything at that moment in time.
There is no way you cannot think of anything.
So you were thinking to the tune of 4%.
So if I did 40 minutes, of those 40 minutes, 4% of the time, would be thinking.
It's very low.
Yeah, but then there is no use to meditate anymore. So I do other exercises. Okay. Why? Because like with the gym, meditation is about your mind wandering, so that you feel that you're no longer in a calm space, and so you use the muscle of deliberate attention to bring yourself back to calm. That action of bringing yourself back to calm is like a bench press.
Got it.
It's that action of pushing a heavy weight that grows your muscles. It's that action of your mind wandering and you're bringing it back through meditation to calm is basically the purpose of meditation. But meditation is not a purpose in its own. It's a practice that gives you control over the, what they normally call the default mode network, your incessant thinking. The thoughts that run in your head incessantly uncontrolled are the reason for all negative emotions, right? And so if you manage to train your mind to one, observe when those thoughts are happening, okay, then two, bring your mind back to calm. Then when you do that exercise enables you, when you're in distress, when someone annoys you, when someone cuts you off in the street, to tell your mind, hold on, we're not going to go there, come back to calm. Okay. And that's why, in Islam, for example, Sayyid Muhammad ﷺ would say, "Arihna biha ya Bilal." So he would take prayer not as a chore, but as a form of comfort that brings you back from that incessant thinking to a spiritual spot where you're not in this physical world and all of the thoughts that come with it, right? And that for every serious meditation practitioner will tell you this is the whole idea. And then, of course, once you get to that high level of, it's easy for me to observe when when my mind wanders, it's easy for me to bring it back. That's when your meditation starts to become a purpose, right? So there are layers of meditation. The highest of them is to be aware of what you're aware of.
Yeah.
Okay. And I normally teach people that there is an easier method than being an ultimate meditator to get there, which is a method I call Meet Becky. So meet your brain, basically. Okay, to sit together with your brain in a way that allows your brain to say things, and you write them down. Okay, and don't laugh at how stupid they are. Right, and every time your brain tells you a thought, you dismiss it. You say, "Okay, I heard you. You think I'm fat. Thanks, brain. What?" And you write it down, and you say, "What else?" Don't forget to call your daughter. Oh, all right, I will not forget to call my daughter. Call, what else? Right, and you keep doing that, and it's so powerful. Because the first thing that happens is that your brain suddenly goes like, oh shit, he's listening. Okay. And starts to become smart. It starts to actually surface important thoughts. Right. But two, which is really, really interesting. I normally set my alarm to 25 minutes for that exercise.
Which is journaling as we know it.
But it's journaling. It could be, but journaling is with the purpose of the journal. Okay. This is with the purpose of actual thinking. So your brain goes wild. You're not trying to control it in any way. There is no script that you're going through. Okay. You're just it's almost like a purge, like a detox.
Got it.
Right. And what ends up happening is that you after
25.
Normally around 11 to 12 minutes in my case, but it could be different for anyone. Suddenly your brain goes like, you go like, okay, so what else? And first it will start to repeat things like, you're fat. You told me that before. Can you please, what else? Right? And then it will go like, nothing. That's it. I have nothing to say. I've said everything I wanted to say. And believe it or not, especially for those who don't succeed at meditation, because meditation is sort of a pull activity and you're constantly trying to pull yourself back. When your brain has said everything it wants to say, peace sets in. Zero effort. Right? It's like suddenly you find those moments where it doesn't want to say anything.
I need to get there.
That's a beautiful place to be. It's as close as you can get to heaven. I'll take more coffee.
Yes,
you
sir.
guys don't mind. This is
our friends over at Brew 92.
Man, what a blend. Yeah.
Still warm.
Actually, it tastes incredible when it's cold as well, but flavor is very very intense when it's hot.
We're saying off air how you were able to detect the blend and which part of the world it's from. You are quite the coffee connoisseur.
But it's part of, so coffee again is part of meditation. So most people don't think about those things, but to be able to deeply detect tastes and senses, to be able to detect colors. I mean, one of the typical meditation exercises I would tell someone who hasn't started is okay, so when you're sitting in a room, instead of focusing on your breathing, look at this room and find everything that's white in color. Okay. And if it takes you a minute or two where your brain is constantly focused on finding white, you're meditating, right? So focusing, so you said to stop your thinking. You're never going to stop thinking. Your brain ticks at 60,000 hertz a day, 66 almost. And with every tick, it's taking a snapshot of the world around it and thinking, organizing that snapshot, right? So the only way the only thing you can do is not to stop thinking, but is to shift thinking from incessant thinking to organized thinking, from noise to experiential thinking. And this is why they say focus on your breathing, right? Because when you're focusing on your breathing, you're replacing that incessant thought with the observation, the experience of something that is your breathing. But if I tell you, find what's white in this room, okay, that's also experiential thinking.
You're distracted by just that one mission.
As a matter of fact, you're focused by one mission. And you can do so many of those. You can be driving your car, to get here, and you say, I'm going to find every number plate that has the number 4 on it. Whether you find any or you don't, it doesn't matter. And during that process, you're completely focused. You're not incessantly thinking. You're not distracted. You're not thinking negatively.
I saw a graph recently which made a lot of sense to me, that we peak at the age of 30 with the amount of people that we spend time with, and then the graph dwindles as you go through age till it almost flatlines at the age of 60, 70, 80. So spikes up. I was thinking, school, college, after college, and at the age of 30, it was very reflective of my life. Got married, and kids came after that, 3, and the graph just goes down, down, down.
That's so interesting.
And my cousins, who I used to do a dinner a week with them, I mean, we have a dinner planned for mid-December. And it's depressing and real at the same time that we spend more time alone than ever. And I think this, I'm trying to bring in the next point I wanted to talk to you about, which was the loneliness pandemic. In a world that's very connected, I think loneliness is a problem on a global level.
Our world is not connected at all. Our world is very superficially connected, which is unfortunately not a glitch. It's by design. It's absolutely designed. We've built a world where the capitalist objectives of those who provide you with certain services works against your well-being. Your health works against the benefit of pharma. Your fitness works against the food industry. Your friendships work against your real world friendships, works against social media. If you're settled in love, in a deep relationship, that works against almost everyone. The dating apps, the porn industry, the restaurants that book all of those dates, and even the wedding industry, which, believe it or not, would benefit from you getting married 3 times instead of 1. So, it's quite interesting that it's almost entirely misaligned. It's that the economics of the modern world is selling you in a very, unfortunately, I don't mind saying this, in a very American Mad Men style advertising fashion.
Post-apocalyptic.
They're trying to sell you things as if they are the best service you've ever, like mobile phones were about connecting people. But when you start to get into the habit of calling your mother instead of visiting, that's not about connecting people, right? Social media is about, what is social about it? There's absolutely nothing social about it. It's almost the extreme antisocial, because it's keeping you looking at a screen instead of, connecting to real people. Dating is not about, dating apps are the absolute opposite of wanting you to meet someone and fall in love, because if you do, you're going to stop paying them the monthly subscription. They don't want that at all. It literally is a casino that keeps you addicted. Even if you're dating, you keep swiping because you're addicted, right? And if you're dating, they have to convince you that no, this is not the one. Don't erase your profile yet. You may need it one day. And it's so sad that the pandemic is real. I mean, 1 of every 3 Gen Z has never had a committed relationship in their life. The average age of a committed relationship in the world now is, in the Western world, is around 2.5 years, right? Think about your parents and how long a committed relationship used to last. And more interestingly, 1 of every 4 Americans today will tell you that if they have a distress in their life, they do not have a single person they can share with. Not a single person. Can you imagine? I mean, we understand, because we have such strong ties to our childhood friends or to our families, that there will always be someone to talk to. There will always be someone that will listen if you want. No, the West is in shackles, really. They're really in a very difficult place.
You hear that if families get together in Thanksgiving and Christmas, khair wa barakah, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
And I don't take it lightly that, every Friday I'm with my in-laws, every Saturday, if not more, I'm with my mother. You get that in a few cultures maybe on Earth, but I think it's
You'll
less
be
than...
surprised. No.
Not even South America, they're like close and religious.
Of course. You see, the problem is what you see in the headlines is Western propaganda all the time. We're all brainwashed to become Americans. Right? But the truth is, the majority of the world, 80%, 85% of the world, lives in the global south. right? So, take anything, take Indonesians or, Latin Americans or Southern Europeans or Middle Easterns or Africans or, Indians or Pakistanis or Bangladeshis or, all of the world other than the highly influenced Western world is, first of all, is not as stressed by time as the rest of the world, and two, is highly social and highly connected, and three is, is much, much more. I always say the difference between the East and the West is that the West lives for two values, focus on the individual and freedom. The East lives for two values, connection to the society and respect. Okay. And you can easily see that. And I include places like, the traditional Japan, the traditional Korea, and so on in the East. But I also, unfortunately, include places like, Sahel Shamali in Egypt in the West. Right. And it is that tug of war between two ideologies, not cultures. One ideology that says you're a gear in a machine. Who cares about connecting to others? Just work harder. You'll have a lot of money. You'll be happy. And another ideology that says, why are you doing this with your life? Life is about a moment spent with a loved one. And I can easily tell you, I've lived half of my life in that. And then I lose Ali and I go like, seriously? Couldn't I have spent few years more sitting next to him instead of running around selling more for Microsoft or for Google? You wake up.
Do you resent this? Obviously, good things came out of the era we live in right now, but with the factoring in of being disconnected, you've lived the 80s and 90s, and a lot of people look back at that era with nostalgia. Would you wish that the world today is still a bit of the 80s and 90s?
I'd if I had a choice, a time machine, if you want, I'd stop the internet at 2007 and I'd stop AI at 2016. Very specifically.
So we had emails, but social media didn't start yet.
It's social media that screwed up everything. So you had email, you had search. Search was wonderful.
Excellent.
Right? You had hyperlinks, so knowledge became connected. You had, news and updates and so on that were basically credible. You had all of the services that came with finance. You had e-banking, so you don't have to suffer dealing with your bank and so on and so forth, right? You suffer more now, for sure. Now, all of that. So social media, Mr. Zuckerberg, destroyed our world and our internet. And then 2016, I think we had enough artificial intelligence to do quite a few technical functions. Most people didn't know that. But 2016 was when we started to work on transformers, and then eventually Mr. Altman completely shakes our world in 2023 with ChatGPT. Yeah. I would continue the development of AI beyond 2016, but I would have waited for safety measures before we would have gone further.
I think I felt violated the time I was talking to my wife about a trip to the Maldives, and next time I open up the Google search, it's showing me 4- and 5-star resorts there.
For sure.
I felt exposed.
You're monitored all the time. You're monitored all the time in every shape and form. And everyone, if you're on a target list of someone, everyone that is 2 degrees of separation away from you is monitored. So the fact that you texted me, man, you're screwed. So there you go. So basically, you think of things like VPNs, which are supposed to be positioned as helping you secure your files and data and so on. They're spying you on you 100%. All of them work for one nation, and that one nation is spying you 100%. Right? You think of social media, you're the product. Right? Your every behavior is monitored in a way that makes them advertise to you. Right? And I know for a fact, because I worked at Google and we understood there are organizations out there that are simply out there to use you as a product. And there are others that attempted to be successfully protective of you. But then eventually they get to the point where they no longer can take the pressure. And so, they get threatened for their business to be stopped. And they start to share their data with the NSA and, the other agencies, and you're monitored all the time.
And that's what got Mr. Zuckerberg into trouble, sharing data with...
Don't know if you call the number of billions that he has and the mansions that he has and the meetings that he has with President Trump all the time trouble. So the truth of the matter is that, our world, I told you about my work on 7 Stories. Our world has always reported to the money, not to the politicians. The politicians always worked for the money.
Mm-hmm.
And money has always been in banking since 1913. It's become this version of money in the banking industry, but now tech is becoming viable as well. So politicians are so Zuckerberg doesn't report to the politicians report to Zuckerberg.
Would you have a child in this current era, knowing what you know about what future generations have to go to?
You're setting me up, aren't you?
Surveillance. And
You're setting me up.
We know how difficult it is, but is it more difficult for you to want to put a child of yours into the universe today?
So I believe that the ultimate responsibility of a parent is to at least attempt to provide an environment for their children to thrive. And if you do not know that you can offer them that environment, then you need to become a better parent, right? I mean, the easiest example to understand is that for you to drive, you have to go and take a driving test to get a driver's license, but anyone can make a child. And most of the time, most of the challenges that humans face in the world is because the father or the mother, when they had a child, were not qualified to raise a child.
Ill-equipped.
So I'd say that the ultimate responsibility is, before you bring a third-party soul to the world, ask yourself, am I going to be able to provide for them? Am I going to bring them to an environment where they have at least a chance to thrive, right? I think our world today is not that environment at all. I think our world is very confusing. It's very, it's deteriorating, which is not a bad thing. A lot of people think of me when I say this as, as if I'm saying the world's going to end. No, but just like every difficult experience you had in your life as an individual made you the person that you are today, we become better, we change because of the tough times, not the easy times. So if you think of humanity as an organism, as one organism, I think humanity is going through that change. We're going through the tough times that will recreate a lot of things: the world order, the finance order, the empowerment of justice, if you want. And you can only go through that. You can only go to that through the pain that the world is going through today. But, think about it. The next few years have very high uncertainties around economics. They have very high uncertainties around geopolitics. They have some certainties around climate, but that's a little further away. They have a massive uncertainty around technology and artificial intelligence. And, I don't know if the world was ever certain, but if it is that uncertain, then I think you should think 3 times.
What keeps you up, Mo? What genuinely scares the hell out of you in the next, say, 5 to 10 years? Is there anything that really occupies your mind at night?
What I know is going to be difficult. What worry is a sense of uncertainty around the future. Okay, you're not really sure if it's going to be bad or good. That's worry. Okay, I think I've passed that stage. I have to admit that our world is. I don't know how to say that any other way. Our world as we know it has ended. Okay? And there is the underlying structure of the world you and I were born in has been capitalism. And capitalism as a system has been, is a system of labor arbitrage. is a system where you and I do a job, we get paid X for that job, but someone else makes X plus one. Okay. And the profit of plus one is the capitalist profit. Most people think that money, that capitalism drives the world. No, capitalism drives the world and makes a lot of money for the capitalists, but the ones that make the most money are the bankers, right? So for me, so let me give you a few stages. There is someone that starts their life by taking a student loan, for example, and then they work for the rest of their life to pay back that loan. Okay, this is the poorest of anyone that's ever made money. So you could also be poorer because you were never given the chance to make money. But if you're making money and you're paying back a loan, right, you're sort of wasting quite a few cycles of your life working for the bank, right? If you borrow money and then use that money to invest and make something that pays back the loan, you're okay. If you work and never borrow, you're better. Okay. If you, but none of these, so you could be the CEO of a company and you're making, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands or millions. That's not the rich people at all. Rich starts from people who borrow against equity. So Elon Musk never sells a stock. Okay. He doesn't care if his companies sell products or not. He builds companies that have equity in them, and then he goes to a bank and says, I need $50 billion to buy Twitter. And so the bank will say, okay, you're going to have to put those many millions of Tesla stocks as a collateral. Okay. So he takes the money, buys Twitter, and then he goes to another bank and says, I need $50 billion to invest in X. And they go like, okay, and X here is something else, not X is Twitter. Huh? Yeah. And they'll say, okay, then you're going to have to pledge your Twitter. But, he bought that for free, literally, from bank's money. You're going to pledge your Twitter shares and we'll give you more money and so on. That's, when money is printed through fractional reserve out of thin air, right? Elon Musk can make $50 billion against equity any point in time. This is real money now, okay? But that's not riches. People think that Elon Musk is the richest man in the world, right? That's by far a lie. The richest people in the world are the people that print that money that Elon and others borrow, right? Because once you walk into a bank and you ask for a loan, that bank never had that money in the vault of the bank to give it to you.
They printed it.
They print it on demand based on fractional reserve. And you know what happens? If you walk in and borrow $1 million, you're borrowing that $1 million against the commitment that you're going to pay it back over a certain number of years. What that means is that the bank, through the act of printing $1 million, is now owed $1 billion. Owed $1 million over that number of years. So they've already made that money. It's just a question of time now.
It's like they issue it upon demand almost.
They basically issue it upon demand, lend it to you, but it's now theirs. Every time you borrow, you've just created another $1 million for them.
Correct. And they have you by the...
Correct. And then so basically the real money is made in finance. Why did I go into all of this? So the capitalist, Elon, is the second richest category in the world. And the financier, the bankers, which are hidden, and very few families in the world own the entire world and lend to you and I and lend to governments and to everyone else. Those make every dollar that's ever been borrowed. Is their money, is their revenue. Now, here's the challenge. The challenge is that we're getting into an era where artificial intelligence is going to replace all the jobs. So labor arbitrage that the capitalist uses to be able to make money for themselves is going to disappear. So the very basic rule of capitalism is going to end, right? And because you and I will not have jobs, then you and I will not be able to make money, then you and I will not have the economic purchasing power to pay back that money if we borrow it. Then the banks have to find a different way to make money. Okay. And when you start to think about those, they have a quick cycle coming up of building robots and AIs that will do all of the work, and they have a quick cycle coming up of replacing all of the existing weapons in the world with autonomous weapons, which means sadly they have to throw those bombs on someone instead of recycling them. And so basically you're in a world where there is a lot of flux, a lot of things that are changing. The very basics of how money was made, how money was lent, how money was paid back, how money was created, which was unfortunately the core underlying principle of everything happening in your world, even though you don't know that, is going to change. Okay. And that amount of change is eventually going to settle in a good place. Why? Because if you and I, most people don't understand this, is, GDP is more consumption than production, right? So if the US economy, for example, is almost 70% now consumption. So they say it's the biggest GDP in the world, but in reality, it's just the amount of shit they buy, okay, that's making the GDP high. So if you and I and everyone are no longer able to buy things because we don't have the purchasing power to do it, the capitalist will not be able to make things, even if he has AI to make them for free, because nobody is buying them, so the economy will collapse. Okay? If the capitalist cannot make things, then the banks will have nobody to lend to, right? Neither you and I, because we don't have economic purchasing power, and nor to the capitalist, because the capitalist is not going to be able to pay it back because he's not selling. And so they're eventually going to settle in a place where everyone has to start consuming again, right? But the transition from where we are today, which is labor arbitrage paying us peanuts so that we can go and consume, so that the capitalist makes money and the financier makes money, this has ended. That cycle has ended. Okay. As we transition to the next cycle, which, by the way, post-capitalism, nobody knows what that looks like, let alone, nobody's discussing it. Nobody's saying what do we need to study to understand this, right? So the fact that this cycle is going to happen is going to be very painful. So for the next 10 to 12 years, 12 to 15 years, I think the world is going to be very unfamiliar. So, do I worry about that? I wouldn't call it worry, because it's very arrogant to think that you know the future, but every calculation I've done in my mind says that we're going in that direction. And everything that you see that your heart disapproves of in the world that we live in today is because of that.
Do you think we could be looking at a future of universal basic income?
I don't. So there is no other way discussed so far that makes any sense. But the problem with universal basic income is quite interesting. Universal basic income is a fancy European or American way of describing communism.
Yeah.
Okay, this is an ideology issue, and if you're a capitalist society, universal basic income is basically what Henry Kissinger used to call feeding the eaters. Okay, the eaters in his mind, and in the capitalist mind in general, are people who consume but not produce. With labor arbitrage disappearing, then everyone is consuming but not producing. And so you can easily imagine that some societies will, like Norway, will say, look, you're our citizens, we respect you. We're going to give you part of the revenue that the country makes. But we're not going to allow any immigrant to come in anymore, because honestly, the privilege of being born here is why we keep you alive, right? Then you start to question things like the purpose of people and what people do every day and so on and so forth. But then obviously there are other societies who will not even afford to pay universal basic income. Many of the Middle Eastern countries will not have the production abilities to create enough money to be able to pay that. There will be societies, believe it or not, that are accepting of the communist mentality in nature, in their very nature. So I believe China will do well. China will simply say, okay, you know what? We're replacing everyone with a robot, but we're going to find a way for everyone to continue in our great nation, okay? In an interesting way, of course, with a lot of control and surveillance, because people who have nothing to do have a lot to think about, right? But then there will be the Western societies, which I think will be hit the most. So you ask yourself, who's going to struggle? And interestingly, the ones that are going to struggle are the heavily capitalist-oriented Western markets. Why? Because, yeah, maybe at the beginning they'll go like, yeah, we'll give an unemployment pay for everyone, a UBI, right? Universal Basic Income. But then that universal basic income has to either come from the taxes on the capitalists, or it has to come from printing money, which causes inflation, which doesn't benefit the ones that have money. And so basically what ends up happening is first they'll feed everyone, and then very quickly the capitalists will say, why are you making me pay so much taxes? I want to pay less taxes. And that cycle basically means that the economy survives at the very bare minimum, giving to the citizen of a place like the US or wherever. And that cycle is very unsustainable, because what that very quickly means is that people who have a lot of time and unfortunately a lot of guns will have to be surveilled very heavily. They'll have to be controlled very heavily. It's not an easy problem to solve for the West at all. I think that's why a lot of what's happening in the world today is so unfamiliar, I think is the right word. It's very unfamiliar, because all of these systems that we've gotten used to over our entire lifetimes have to be reset.
I'm sick and tired of hearing about this ticking bomb that's going to put everything back to zero. Is that a potential reality?
Economically, you mean?
Economically. A bubble burst of all bubbles.
So there are a few lies about the current bubble structure. So the last real bubble was 2008. And since 2008, one thing that most people don't recognize about the stock market. Stock market, by the way, is a gambler's economy. It has nothing to do with the real economy. It doesn't produce anything. And it actually takes away from the real economy, because if anyone has a chance to make money by parking their money is in the S&P, by definition, they wouldn't park that money in real businesses, right? Mm-hmm. The interesting thing is that if you look at the major stock markets, in the world, take the S&P, for example, around 80% plus of all stocks in America are owned by institutions. They're not owned by individuals, right? Around 35% almost, don't quote me, it could be 33%, of all stocks in America are owned by three institutions, specifically Vanguard, BlackRock, and State Street, I think, or one or another. So, but basically Vanguard and BlackRock for sure. And what that means, which you may have noticed over the last since 2008, is that for a stock market to collapse, a stock market is not a real reflection of the economy. This is the propaganda they sell you. Okay, stock market is herd mentality. So if everyone believes that Intel is going to go up, everyone buys into Intel, and Intel goes up as a result. They may not have produced anything differently. They may not have lost anything differently. But if everyone believes and everyone buys, then the stock will go up. If everyone believes and everyone sells, then the stock goes down. And because institutions hold the majority of stocks, if they don't sell, the market doesn't collapse. And that's the artificial bubble that we've been living in for so long. I do not know how that bubble would burst, to be honest. Okay. Other than, so what has been happening since 2008 is, with the exception of 2022, the return after COVID, every crash of the stock market since, please look at the numbers, has lasted less than 2 months. Okay, which was simply an opportunity for the big institutions to buy at a lower price and create more wealth. You look at the very ethical President Trump as he walks into the presidency and swings that magic wand of trade tariffs, and crypto collapses by 40% or something like that, he knew very well what he was doing, because eventually you could see that he was saying things are going to be better, and then he reverses that decision, and overnight people who lost 40% and gone out of the market, others have bought those stocks and are up 40% within a month, right? And so there is quite a bit of rigging in that place.
I was going to say almost insider trading.
It's no longer, it's quite interesting that you call it that, because it's 80% insiders now, right? I mean, you have to understand, if you take any consumer good, if you take baby diapers, okay, you would walk into a supermarket and see 20 brands on the shelf, but all of the brands are owned by 3 companies, other than a tiny little corner in the bottom right, okay? And all of those companies are owned by the same institutions. So basically, they call it megacorp, is just deciding everything. It's, at the end of the day, they decide what needs to be put in those diapers, regardless of if it's good for the babies or not. And there is no competition, it's just all stupid branding, and we're just buying some, And in my mind, it's quite shocking, because you have to ask yourself, why the F do I need to buy an American burger or an American cup of coffee in Saudi? Like, how challenging is it for a local, incredible, successful player to say, I don't need American expertise to create a chain of stores that serves the best coffee in the kingdom, right? What happened to us humans, other than being brainwashed for so long, that makes us walk into a confectionery aisle, and every single chocolate in the aisle is owned by 3 companies? How difficult is it to make chocolate? Seriously. Like, how difficult is it to make fried chicken? Like, seriously. And it's all branding, and it's all stupid, and it's all harming the entire world. And somehow, it's all artificially held together. So would the stock market collapse? It has to. Every number on the planet says it has to. But if my assessment of the bubble is, of the glue that holds them together is real, then they won't sell, and the market will continue to soar, artificially held together. I have no idea. I'm not a stock analyst, but I can tell you there is a lie there. Okay, I'll tell you another interesting lie. So I in my current book, Alive, I write about life in the age of the rise of the machines. Okay, and I write in the age of AI. So my co-author is an AI. Okay, and I use a lot of AI for research. And one of the things I was trying to understand is why there are so many wars in the world, and why does the U.S. give away so many weapons when there are more than 100 million homeless people in the U.S. today. Okay, and it just hit me that if war is about deterrence, then having the latest weapon is very important to deter your enemy. And with the introduction of so much investment in autonomous weapons that are automated by AI, a man-operated tank is a classic tank. It really does not deter anyone in the war games anymore. And so when you really have to think about it, for the US to remain the world superpower, if you want, which is now contested with the way China is progressing, the US has to replace its entire arsenal. So I did a very deep search with my co-author, Trixie, the AI. We did a very deep conversation around, how would the US go about replacing its arsenal? Okay, and like everything else, believe it or not, armies have financial guidelines and books and depreciation, and right, the average depreciation of a military equipment is around 10 to 30 years. So if the US waits 10 to 30 years to depreciate the current equipment to replace them with autonomous weapons, they stand to be rendered obsolete. So what do they need to do? They need to accelerate that cycle. So my AI predicted that the US has invested between 24 to 26 trillion dollars in their current arsenal. And that report will shock you, just so that you know the power of AI today. That the machines that I work with went out and said they have 371 of that weapon. They have, 150,371 of that weapon. They have 600 and I don't know what of that rocket. They have, and so like, isn't that classified? I have no idea how it found all of that. It cost 24 to 26 trillion dollars. And for them to replace it, they need to increase the budget, the military budget, by $2.5 trillion a year. But for them to recycle it, that's the interesting side of it, huh? For the US to retire an army, or for any army to retire a weapon, they have to unassemble the explosive bits, store them very safely, and then take the other bits and throw them in the Nevada desert or whatever. They can't resell them, right, as used cars would be, because that's weaponry. So that's, a very expensive process just to end the life of a weapon. What's the easier process?
To use it and bomb people.
Sure, correct.
My goodness.
Bomb innocent people. Okay? And when you bomb innocent people, you're running out of those weapons, but also you have a very clear case to give to the Congress that says, we need more money. We gave this to others, our friends. Right? And all of those proxy wars are incredibly necessary in the world we live in. Why? Because without a proxy war, without a common enemy, you may get a civil uprising in the US because people are very upset about the kingdom. They're very upset about, the economic conditions. They are upset about many, many things. And so how do you distract them? You create a proxy war somewhere. You get their attention to be there. How do you continue to borrow money so that the high-level bankers continue to make more trillions? War is the ultimate form of making money. I did a study on, again with my AI, on military spending since the Ukraine war started. So 2022, 2023, the military spending is around $2.6 to $2.9 trillion a year around the world. All of that is money.
Global budgets.
Yeah, global budgets. Now, interestingly, for 5% of that, just to understand this, 5% of the military spent, in 2024, 2023 and 2024, 5% of that, there wouldn't be a single hungry person on the planet. It would end world hunger.
With 5% of global military
5% of military budget. For 12% of that, you would end poverty. So there will never be a poor person on earth again. Okay, for around 4 to 6% of that, you would give universal health care to every human on the planet. Every human on the planet will go to a hospital for free for 6% of the military budget. Okay, for 1 year of the military budget, you can irreversibly change the course of climate change. So you have to ask yourself, what kind of world have we built? We've built a world where the benefit of the entire planet is in one side of the scale, while the money for the defense establishment, the military-industrial complex, and the bankers is in the other scale, and that scale wins. Right? It's a world that, like I said, which I have to say, I have to qualify what I'm saying because it's important. It's a shitty world. But just like us humans were the shittiest periods of our life, were the periods that made us the people that we are. This is where you learn. This is where you find resilience. This is where you develop and grow. You only become better. You only change direction. You only change your mind. You only work on yourself when you're faced with challenges. Humanity at large is faced with challenges. And for the first time ever, humanity at large are opening their eyes and saying, what? Did you lie to me about JFK? Did you lie to me about 9/11? Did you lie to me about the Epstein files? Did you lie to me about, who actually invested in Al-Qaeda, who actually invested in ISIS, did you lie to me about who was supporting Hamas, and so on, right? And then suddenly the world starts to wake up and says, it's painful to recognize all of this, but perhaps we need to do something differently. Perhaps we need to stop enabling AI to take the jobs of people. Perhaps we need to stop, wasting so much money on explosives. Perhaps we need to stop electing, politicians that control the world in a country that is struggling probably more than anywhere else in the world. And you can see that. You can see, in the US today, the number of people that align with the Palestinian cause, not the Israeli cause, has shifted. Now it's around 70% or 60 to 70%, depending on the state, of Americans will say this is madness. Okay, they support the Palestinians' right to live and to have a state, right? And so you can easily see that the world is changing. But to answer your question, is do you believe as a parent that you have the certainty to bring a person in the world today with all of the massive changes that are happening in the world? Do you have the certainty? Are you strong enough? Are you rich enough? Are you powerful enough to be able to provide that child with a prosperous life? If you are, absolutely go for it. Get 20 because others shouldn't. Okay? And I think that's the truth of our reality. If you live in Europe today, with all of the uncertainties around the economics of Europe, the immigration, the social issues, and so on, do you feel comfortable to bring a child in the world and to provide for them? If you do, go ahead.
Are we in that period today that one day we will look back at that period as that shitty part that made us who we will eventually become?
I do not think in the modern history of humanity, since the invention of the propaganda machine, humanity has ever woken up as much as it did in the last couple of years.
Yeah,
that's for
There's been an awakening.
It's an enormous, including me. Okay, so there were times, if you look back at my history of podcasting, there were times where I advised people not to spend too much time watching the news, right? And I still never watch the news, just understand that. But I watch deep analysis on that they claim is the news.
Got it.
Right? And for the very first time in my 58 years of life, I have a keen interest in understanding the underlying currents that cause humanity to be where it is today. Okay? And I'm an idiot that's never watched a single news story. But now I am fully awake. Now I'm fully awake to the industrial capitalist machine that I contributed to, okay, that I believed in. I'll tell you openly, and I'm ashamed to say this, okay, but I believed the machine that said that we, Arabs and Muslims, are evil people, that at least some of us are. You know what? We're the nicest people on the planet. That is the truth. And like any nation on the planet, there are some of us that are evil, some of us that are amazing. Okay, but the truth of the matter is that most of the stories that were told on our behalf, that I had no source of listening to other than CNN, are not true.
We believe the source.
Yeah, they're not true at all. And when you really think deeply about who is the orchestrator behind all of those stories, suddenly you realize that our only mistake is we were gullible. We accepted that those stories be told about us, okay? But we're the kindest, the most welcoming, the most hospitable. I mean, you're Saudi. You know how generous you guys are. Like, I go and meet my friends and I'm bombarded with gifts. Like, people, I don't have space in my bag for this, right? It's unbelievable how wonderful this region is.
And Mo, not just because you are who you are, but even if you were 100%. A nobody, you would be treated with that.
Of course. I mean, my home country, when I was born, Egypt, right? People will have nothing to eat and they'll invite you into their home and give you everything they have.
Karam.
Yeah.
Hospitality.
And it's not that. It's the ability for us to truly and genuinely abide by ethics. Okay? Yeah, people told us to dislike religion. Of course, that's international propaganda, right? But the truth is, a lot of our pure nature comes from a code book that says, be kind to your neighbor, okay? That says, believe it or not, this is one of the things that are exploding across the internet, is how much Muslims love Jesus. Like, I truly love Jesus. That's part of my makeup. That's part of what I was told in my religion, that you cannot be a Muslim unless you believe in all of God's messengers.
Yeah, Sayyidina Isa.
And now the internet is starting to recognize that, hey, they told us that the others love Jesus. They don't. Those are the guys that love Jesus, right? And you have to imagine that this comes at a price. It comes at the price of the pain that we're going through right now, okay? But it's absolutely, of course, it's horrible for a woman that lost her child, or someone that, that was kept hostage for 2 years or whatever. But if you take humanity as an organism, as one organism, it's worth the pain.
Yeah. We spoke about our region, GCC, MENA, being consumers for the longest time. And now, we're seeing brands, whether it's coffee, whether it's burgers, whether it's whatever you want to call it, really showing how good they can be in their respective industries. Question is, are you noticing any winds of change that the MENA region at whole, or the Islamic region, could be what was once dubbed as the new, let's say, Western Europe?
We don't want to be. We're very different in that nature. So look, Western Europe, so the next revolution, if you ask me, is a revolution of tech, right? Which I tend to believe is a revolution that will be won by China, okay? Again, the propaganda machine will not want you to know that. But China is way ahead on every field of tech that I care about, okay? Quantum computing, just for you to understand, they're 5.9 billion times faster than the Google computer.
Wow.
Okay. Of course, it's a very unstable technology, but if they make it stable, that's how far ahead they are.
Wow.
Right. And most people think that ChatGPT is so fancy. DeepSeek is fantastic. Okay. But that's not the point. The point is that the Chinese AI is not that fancy at all. They've saved themselves something like 16% of the supply chain cost of textile using AI. Okay, 16% of 90% of the textile made in the world. That's massive. Okay, when you really think about this, you understand that we here in the region, we are good at other things. We've always been the best traders. Okay, we've always been powerful in terms of our connections and alliances, right? And we've lived for a very long time aligned with an agenda that wasn't ours. Okay, and that ability to align differently. By the way, I'm not saying drop the West at all. I'm not saying drop America at all. As a matter of fact, I think for the success of a global economy, you just need to hedge your bets differently. Okay, and you can see that across the world. You can see the power that Saudi yields. Here we're sitting in Riyadh. The power that this place yields because of its ability to invest, because of its ability to say, I'm going to be G7 very soon, right? Because of its leadership that says, I'm going to invest, so if you want to do business, come, we're open for business. And you will see, because I have to say it's very sensitive for people to understand this, but this is a very balanced game that cannot be done overnight or cannot be changed just because of the feelings of your heart. It has a lot of wisdom in it, where your weight, I'm going to say this in a way that may shock people, the American consumer holds the biggest contribution to the American GDP because they consume. Okay, we have consumed for very long, but we're now consuming in ways that are building our societies. Okay, we're building. This economy is just unbelievable when you think about it, and the opportunity and how everyone will come to your door and say, please take my product. Don't take the other guys. But we have to bet intelligently. We have to bet intelligently in terms of I believe this region becomes what it's always been: the traders, the connectors, the influencers, the money makers, by aligning slightly differently. You can see how, many parts of the region is aligning with BRICS a little more. They're not dropping the US, but they're just saying to the US, hey, look, if you're not going to be nice, I have alternatives.
Options, yeah.
Right? And you will see that happening. That's one side. The other side is, something that I'm working on personally. So, my message around artificial intelligence for years was that I was trying to start a movement that would make societies behave in ways that enables AI to be ethical. And then I decided, no, hold on. I should also enable AI to be ethical. Okay. And I am a very serious geek. So I started myself to build a very valuable ethical AI. Okay. That I believe will become a massive, massive contribution economically, but also to our world at large. I picked a topic of loneliness, right? And I said, okay, I'm going to build an AI that helps us solve loneliness. Okay. Starting with romantic love, which we mentioned earlier, is being completely skewed to the benefit of dating apps everywhere in the world, by the way. And one of the biggest dating apps, believe it or not, is social media. A lot of people meet on social media. And most of the time, it almost destroys our perception of romantic love because it never really works. And if you take the West, believe it or not, the statistics are staggering. Now, body counts are going up through the roof of people just going through relationship after relationship after relationship and not able to maintain any real, genuine love. Okay, and so what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to build something that will reverse that. I believe that it will actually reverse that. An app called Emma.love, and Emma is out of this region. Okay. And it's built in this region. It's built with, my co-founder is a Middle Eastern, Sanad. And Sanad and I are very serious geeks. We have the capability to build amazing things. But more interestingly, it lives in this region. It will be hosted and managed out of this region. Okay. And it's built not on technologies that live and rely on, on ChatGPT or whatever. We built our own, we took our own open source AI and modified it and improved it and so on and so forth. And Emma will have two effects in my mind. Emma will, from one side, solve love, which is the biggest reason for unhappiness in the world today, because people are either single, so many are unable to find love at all, or they're in a horrible relationship, unable to manage it, or they're divorced. Okay. And the majority of people, I would say, other 98.6% of everyone who is in romantic love age is struggling. So Emma can solve that. But believe it or not, remember, the whole idea is that Emma will teach AI about love. So as she's talking to 1 million users, trying to get to understand, why did you argue last night? What could you have done differently? Why does this matter to you? Why don't you? And so on. I'm teaching AI not that productivity and making, and writing emails more efficiently is the only thing that matters in the world. That in reality, when you look at the core of humanity, the thing that really matters is we want to build human connections. We want to fall in love. We want to care about those that we love. Okay. And we want to establish a method, a logical method that enables us to navigate that very confusing world that's becoming more and more confusing every day. Okay. And I can build this here. Everyone can do that. Okay. Everyone can do that. Everyone will be able to do that more and more. Okay. And in my mind, Emma will hopefully, in our design, serve the region first. Okay, even though the US might be a much bigger market, but that's the mentality we need to start seeing. When I was a young Googler, if you want, or a young businessman in general, if you wanted to succeed in business, you had to attack the American market. Why? This The Middle East is a mega market. Nobody truly serves the Middle East. Why? Because we're constantly distracted among all of the other Western players that come and take our market. But the truth is, if you really serve the Middle East well with a proper understanding, because by the way, love and relationships in the Middle East are very different than the UK. Okay, so if you really have a cultural sensitivity and a cultural understanding to this, you can make a massive difference. And that's what I'm urging people to do now. We are entering a stage where it won't pay to be an employee, okay, for the long term, because AI will replace those jobs over the next 10 years. And at the same time, it's becoming a lot easier to be an entrepreneur. And at the same time, there is a shift in the world where we have more and more access to technology and power in this side of the world. I think that's what we should do. I think we should wake up and really, really take our space.
I think we never betted on ourselves. Like you're talking about Emma, that's the antithesis of Tinder. I look at Noon, it's the antithesis of Amazon. I look at Humane, the new Saudi AI startup. It's hardly a startup, but that's the antithesis of ChatGPT. Is self-reliance here the name of the game?
So believe it or not, it's part of the propaganda machine. We were told to believe that we're not good at this stuff.
True.
Okay? But it hits you so hard. In all honesty, I mean, I'll tell you openly, if you go to Cairo, Egypt now, if you had been in a supermarket 5 years ago, 90% of the soft drink aisle would have been Pepsi and Coke, right? If you go to any supermarket in Egypt today, 90% of the aisle is local drinks.
Local. There's this new one in Saudi, guys. Kinza. Kinza's taken over the shelves in Saudi.
100%. And you have to ask yourself, what prevented us from doing that before? Two things. One was a mindset at the entrepreneur level that believed this is an unshakable market. Okay? And a mindset at the investor level that didn't trust the local player. Okay? But every time one of us succeeds, every time a business is built here and it's successful, that business then becomes what? Becomes the promise for the investors that, by the way, are putting their money in the US bond market. Okay? To bring that money back and invest it here. And you could see that cycle in many markets in the world. The ultimate market of that is what? China. Right? So why, funny enough, when the trade wars started between America and China, you started to see Chinese politicians coming out and talking publicly about their opinion of the US, okay? Which is unheard of. Like in all of my years in Google, where I was probably the only executive that was welcomed in the Chinese government because of a cultural sensitivity. I am not Californian, okay? The Chinese government for all of those years wouldn't express anything. You wouldn't hear what they have to say. They suddenly, got up and said, "I'm not the enemy." You know who's the enemy? They're saying this publicly. The enemy is all the money that you're putting in a war machine while we're investing in infrastructure. Okay, and so for the last 30 years, you've spent, $25 trillion on war. Okay, you've exploded in, so many weapons in all of those proxy wars, while we've built the largest train network in the world, we've built the largest power network in the world, we built the largest fleet in the world, manufacturing in the world, and so on and so forth. We're not the enemy. You're your own enemy. Okay, and I think that's the reality. The reality of the Middle East is that the more we bring the money back here and invest here, look at Saudi. Great example of that. The more Saudi invests in Saudi, the more the success stories would enable investors to say, hey, I kept my money in the bond market, I made 5%, but my friend gave it to that young, clever Saudi entrepreneur, and she made him 100%. Okay? And think about that. Think about the beauty of what's about to happen. Everything's easier to build. We are finally seen for who we are in the world. Okay? At least the shift is starting to happen.
Yes,
we're not the ugly terrorists that want to kill everyone. We're the nicest people on the planet. And at the same time, we have so much money and investment, and it's not safe to keep it there anymore. So bring it back and invest it here and serve the region and serve the world.
And I think, Mo, that attracts FDIs, right? When a foreign investor sees that you believe in your own country, hold on one second, let me ride that wave for you. Let me ride that wave with you.
Do you want to know how many people begged me to invest in Emma? From all over the world, the UK, the US, China, Japan, everywhere, okay? Look, you build something with substance in a region that's growing faster than anywhere else in the world, you'll get investment. We refused to take investments. Emma was valued at $50 million 3 weeks after we announced it, okay? And we refused. Well, of course, we refused for a very interesting reason, because Sanad is so ethical. He's the best co-founder I ever worked with. We want to retain our ability to make a difference.
Yeah.
Right? Making a difference with Emma means it's not about the dollar signs. It's about the number of people who will find and nurture true love. Okay? And that's the only measure we have. And if we can, get 1,000 people in the first few months to find and nurture new love and, true love, and then those become 10,000 in the second month, and then become 100,000 in the first quarter, and so on and so forth, you're bound to be a massive business.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? But most people forgot about that. Most people were all about I'll just put it in this and, invest in a crypto and it will give me 20%.
Mm-hmm.
And you've built nothing by investing in a crypto that give you 20%. Help us build this region. If keep investing enough cryptos for your next Ferrari, okay? But help us build this region. Because if you build this region, every single investment that you have today will triple in value.
We said that almost nothing that we know as what we know today will last in the medium-term future. I look at the schooling system, for example, and I think it bothered me most. Gone. It irked me most when my kids started to go to school. And I was very condescended growing up, going to schools in the UK that put me in the lowest math class, that told me that I was an idiot. So I went through my entire schooling and college career thinking that I was an idiot. Maybe the only time I realized that I wasn't is when I saw a bit of success in this space. Mm-hmm. And I bet you if we went to Buckinghamshire, England, me and you today, and went to my school, Stowe School, we would still see that segregation based on intelligence, and it drives me nuts.
What type of intelligence? That's the point. That's the whole point. Schooling system is blind, because I was an ultimate math geek, okay? But I sucked in my social skills, and I couldn't dance for my life, right? Which kind of intelligence? Is emotional intelligence a type of intelligence? Is linguistic intelligence a type of intelligence? Is athletic intelligence a type of intelligence? Because school, again, I am really sad to say, because of the capitalists, were the factory that was molding graduates that fit in the industrial requirement.
Yes, post-industrial revolution.
Yeah. Being creative, which, by the way, is what ADHD is frowned upon, because we don't want those people. We want people to come and do as the manager says.
Yeah.
Right? Now, the point is this. Education is different than learning. Learning is the purpose, okay? And learning what you excel at is the purpose. You don't have to learn geography if you're an artist. But more interestingly, education is just the tech, right? Okay, so an education comes from a long time back when, religious schools wanted to teach, a student the Bible or the Quran or whatever. And so instead of teaching one student at a time, they started to teach 5 students at a time. That's the technology. Okay. And at the time, it was revolutionary to find ways to teach 5 students at a time when students are different. Okay, you have to mold all of them so that they become similar so that you can teach them. And then you even advance that over the years until you get into e-learning. It's just a school with a screen, right? None of that technology is ever developed. Now, here's the point. The point is, I'm a very serious math geek. Okay, until 3rd year engineering university, I wasn't allowed to use a scientific calculator. I didn't mind because I'm okay with math. And then they gave me one. Oh my God. my life flipped upside down. I still do a lot of math in my head, but if I want an accurate result, I will absolutely find my calculator. Okay? There is absolutely no need for me to memorize the arithmetics. There's absolutely no need for me to solve difficult algorithms of cosine and sine and some, integration or whatever. That's all on the scientific calculator in a minute. And so take that example and apply it to knowledge. Knowledge is now a question away. It's literally a question away. And so why would I put students in a classroom and teach them knowledge that was discovered 20 years ago when it's going to change next year because of the fast pace of progress? Okay. And why do they need to memorize any knowledge at all? What they need to learn is to ask the questions. And if you ask the right questions, you'll get the right answers. And instead of spending your time doing the math, okay, use a scientific calculator and spend your time on the design. So a student today needs to ask the right questions and use knowledge effectively. Schools are not adapting to that at all. Why? Because they're built on a system that has millions of teachers and administrators and so on that are paid for the current system. It's a bureaucracy.
Which is flawed.
It was effective when there was no other technology. Okay? It's no longer effective at all.
Because education is free and available on the internet.
Because learning is available and free on the internet, and the technology to achieve learning is no longer education.
Yeah. I learned how to do this in 5 days on YouTube.
Exactly. And so what happens now is, if you're a parent, what do you do with your children? Do you send them to school or not? And I can't make that choice. But if I were a parent of young children now, I'd weigh more of their focus and education to learning AI, to learning social skills, to learning human connection, not to learning geography and social studies.
Yeah.
It's a waste of everyone's time.
I think the old saying is, if your son or daughter has an amazing backhand in tennis, don't get them a math tutor. Just double down on their strengths.
My parents did the opposite. Okay. If your son was very good in math, don't get them a tennis coach. That's which I used to tell my children that openly. So most parents, if your child came back with a B in some subject, you'd tell them, like, why did you get a B, not an A? And I remember Habibi Allah Yarhamu Ali vividly. He came back with a B in geography, and I said, why did you get a B in geography? Why not a C? Like, that's a waste of your time. It's not your topic at all. I just want you to pass. Okay, I care that you get an A in math because he was very good in math. He loved biology, right? So I cared that he got an A there, but I didn't give a damn what he got in geography. The geography was the tax that they applied on him to go to school, right? Social studies, history. What history? It's all a big lie. Okay? And honestly, if you want to study history today, which is a better place? A deep search on the internet where you debate with an AI with a proper prompt, or a history teacher?
Yeah, I think the first one.
For sure.
So Mo, is it double down on your strengths or work on your weaknesses? Because all our lives have been told to work on our weaknesses.
That's a horrible approach. The only way you can succeed in life, actually, first chapter of Solve for Happy, is that they tell you that you have to work really hard to achieve happiness. Okay? I think if you find happiness, you'll find at work, you'll work on things that you really enjoy, you'll become the best in the world at them, and you'll find success as a result.
And it won't feel like work.
And like me, it wouldn't feel like work at all. Now, here's the trick. The trick is you can't ignore your weaknesses. You have to either complement them with someone that can help you, okay, or acknowledge them so that they are not part of the tasks that you get, right? Or learn enough of them to be able to navigate. You can't ignore your weaknesses. But if you want to advance in life, you double down on your strengths all the way through.
Outside of the books you wrote, do you have a favorite one that has a special place in your heart? Books or
that
authors?
I read?
Outside of yours.
Yeah, for sure.
What are your favorites?
Both of Michael Singer's, The Untethered Soul and The Surrender Experiment. All of Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now on New Earth. Byron Katie's Loving What Is. I love all of Malcolm Gladwell's work.
How to Talk to Strangers was one of the
Outliers.
last one I read, I think.
Yeah, Outliers, Blink, all of the early works I love even more. I read 1 million books on business and then started to realize that business is a waste of life. So I don't do that anymore.
So what would you, how did you, I need to push back on that. How did you realize it was a waste of life reading business books? This is very interesting.
There is a massive difference between business and capitalism, and there is a massive difference between leadership and management. And business books teach you management, how to oppress people. Leadership is not about that at all. Leadership is how to believe so strongly in something that makes a difference to the world that you serve, and do it so well that your team will follow you, that you will be manically running forward to that objective because you believe in it, and your users or consumers will love it, right? And it's so much easier. So Emma, again, as an example, we rewrote the code 7 times. That's not very capitalistic. But again, Sanad is so ethical. He looks at it and he goes like, and I'm like, it's actually okay. And he's like, no, hold on. Imagine if it could do this instead of that. Anyone who is interested in making a quick buck would have said, no, we'll launch it as that. He doesn't want to. And I believe in that 100%.
Ethics first.
Because the idea is you can accelerate $1 million, or you can wait and affect 1 million lives. And that's a very interesting choice. So the truth of business before the capitalist business books came out is that business is about finding a problem that affects the lives of certain people, solving it so well that people actually use your technology repeatedly, or your solution repeatedly, and if they do, you're bound to make a lot of money.
Uber is a good example.
Uber is a great example of a concept that's very unethically executed.
How unethically? Educate me, please.
The driver,
he gets screwed off a bad deal.
100%. Right? So if you were truly, genuinely trying to make a difference, you would make it so rewarding to the driver, so that the driver is not squeezed in the middle through labor arbitrage. Okay, that absolutely costs you nothing. Costs you nothing. The driver is paying his own expenses all the time, and yet you're screwing him on the revenue share. Okay, but Uber has demonstrated quite a few unethical behaviors that were documented in the news. But that's not the point. The point is, it solved a big problem.
Yeah,
right. And solving that big problem is something that, if you look at our Middle East region, there are so many of those big problems that have been solved for us Western way.
Yeah, a lot.
Quite a few.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think it's about time for us here in the region to solve our problems our way, and to start exporting our way to the world like the West has exported to us for so long. Right. And there are so many things that we excel at. And I think that's the point. The point is, one of the things that I never shared that story, but it really affected me. Do you remember when the 12 Days War, when Israel was bombing Iran?
Yeah.
And there was that reel on the internet that really went viral of a wedding in Lebanon, where the Lebanese were dancing while the missiles were flying on top of them.
Remember
that? It was so inspiring of how honestly fun-loving the Lebanese are. How resilient they are, having lived through so many wars in their life. But then there was a wave afterwards, where you started to see Palestinian children singing on guitars, Iranian artists, beautiful Iranian women singing beautiful music that suddenly tells the whole world, no, we're not savages. We're actually really very interesting women and very interesting humans. Okay? And somehow that perception change of, we actually have a lot to contribute. We are very artistic. We're very cultured. We're very ethical. We're very kind. We're very. As we start exporting this more to the world, we create a region that is attractive to the world. And I don't know if I'm allowed to say that prediction, but what created the US economy was in the 70s how the US attracted talent like me. Okay? I mean, I was nothing then, but people who were very highly specialized in certain skills, whether from Russia or from China or from Japan or from India, were allowed to immigrate into the US to build all of those businesses. And you look at it today, most of the AI CEOs in the US are Chinese origin. Okay, most of the tech entrepreneurs are Indian, and so on and so forth. Because of the disruptions that are about to happen in the West, many people are going to leave the West. Those are people that have a lot of money, they have a lot of skills, they have a lot of influence. Okay, and shouldn't we find a way to get them to come here? One very interesting, because of my ties to Egypt, one very interesting sort of genre of social media reels that I see are about Americans that go and live in Egypt, or Europeans that go and live in Egypt and sing the praises of Egypt. Okay, and that applies for everywhere in the region. By the way, when people come and interact with us, they go like, "Oh my God, they're so wonderful," and they told me otherwise my whole life, but look at them, how generous, how kind, how respectful, how safe we are. And suddenly, when you start to, if we start to capture that talent, because by the way, if you leave America today, you wouldn't have a space to go back to in Latin America. It's not very safe. You wouldn't have a space to go back to in Europe. Okay, it's collapsing economically. Taxes are extremely high. You could probably go back to the east, to Asia, but it's sometimes unfamiliar. But yes, absolutely. Or you could go back to the Middle East. You could move to the Middle East, and we can attract so much of that talent. And of course, it's not about Saudization. It's not that we only want to build businesses with Saudis, or Emiratization. We don't only want to build businesses with Emiratis. We want to bring all of that talent and do the role that America did in the 70s.
You're seeing that, right, on some level?
For sure.
Singapore and Dubai had the biggest influx of millionaires last year at the expense of London.
London was a disaster last year.
Biggest exodus.
Yeah. Biggest exodus ever, and the highest net worth, right? And of course, you know what that means, that the taxes that those people are not going to be paying next year are going to be loaded to the people below them. Okay, so the next wave of taxes are going to have to come from the citizens of the UK, and so many of them will leave, and that cycle will continue.
Isn't that alarm bells? If you are on the country that is on the wrong side of that, don't you make adjustments at some point?
What adjustments can you make? So the problem is, if you have a war machine that requires you to spend $1 trillion a year, and what can you do if you've spent all of your Social Security money? Some people are even speculating that the US sold all its gold. Okay, what do? You have to run that economy, and every president comes in for 4 years, or every prime minister for the UK. It's a limited, time number of years, and basically they don't want to solve the big problems. They just want to navigate. They want to do the best they can by borrowing more, by taxing more, by saving their voters, not voters, their funders, a little more money, because all of those politicians are elected because of billionaire money, right? And so the whole system is very difficult to break out of. And Bernie Sanders was on Jon Stewart the other day talking about how rigged the U.S. political system is, because you're either in the APAC camp where you're influenced by a foreign nation trying to get the politicians by funding them or funding against their opposition, or you're in the camp of the billionaires who are simply saying, I'll help you get elected if you help me reduce my taxes. Okay? And these are very entrenched systems. And so if those systems exist, how do you break out of them? The only way you can break out of them, like I've mentioned many times, is through pain. And how does that pain happen? Things continue to collapse until, a Mamdani shows up in New York City and people go like, yeah, enough of the old white American guy that we've elected for so many years. Let's elect something different and see what happens.
All of my growing up years, we were led to believe that monarchies are not the way and you guys are oppressed. And you look at what systems are actually working today in the GCC and the Arab world at large. I think that governance is working a lot better than someone who's in and out the door every 4 years.
No, but it's more than that. So there was a survey. I don't remember who. I think it was Queen Rania. I think was speaking at Google at a point in time, and she was mentioned. Don't quote me on that, but I remember hearing it in one of the events where she was there, and the speaker said that there was a survey in the Middle East around what people want. Do they want democracy? Right? And most people said, I don't want to spend my life thinking about politics. I want a fair leader. Okay? And when we have fair leaders in this region, you get things done. There's no debate about it. I don't know if I'm allowed to share this, but I got Eric Schmidt here to Saudi when I was heading emerging markets. Abdurrahman Tarabzouni was our country manager in Saudi. Abdurrahman's very capable. And Eric, in his difficult manner, calls me, and says, I want to come and visit the region. Can we get me to meet the important people? And so overnight, Abdurrahman makes a few calls. The week later, we get Eric to meet with true leadership in Saudi Arabia. And unlike what he thought of the region, he basically said, I don't like this. This is why we're not investing. And I can literally tell you, without mentioning names, top incredible leaders in this place would put a blank piece of paper in front of him and say, explain to us what would work differently. We will see. If we like it, we'll make it happen. If we like it, we'll make it happen is why decisions such as Vision 2030 can happen here. Okay? And imagine if you were going through Congress taking votes on the big, beautiful bill, and how long that would have taken. Now, the trick is this. The trick is most of our people don't recognize the challenges and the complexities that our leaders will have to go through. Okay? And I know some people are listening to me now and saying, our leaders are not fair. If you sat in their chair and had to balance all of the global powers and had to balance all of the dirtiness of the intelligence agencies that are operating everywhere in the world and had to balance, you would have made your decisions unlike what you, just reading the newspaper, think should be made. Okay, if your sovereign wealth is tied to a specific currency, and you had to make economic decisions that made sure that your people had prosperity and so on and so forth, and I have to say, I'm impressed. I will openly say that I've lived everywhere in the world. The biggest difference, though, which is really mind-blowing, and I used to say that publicly to people in the UK when I lived in London, and people would go like, what are you talking about? And I say, look, politicians in this part of the world or leaders in this part of the world will make decisions without really consulting with the people for the benefit of the people. Politicians in your part of the world will lie through their teeth to make it look like a democracy. They will make you feel fear. They will make you feel that everything's going to collapse unless you vote for what they believe is what they want to do. They'll make you believe that this is your benefit when in reality it isn't. And eventually you will have wasted a year of your life in a debate like Brexit. Okay? And eventually you'll find yourself in Brexit when it's not that great for your nation, and you'll think that it's a democracy. that's the worst thing you can ever do. It's never been a democracy, not in my lifetime. It's just been a very clever propaganda machine that made you think that you're making the decisions. But what decisions?
It's literally campaigning 101.
It's campaigning through lies all the time, through lies and fear.
I don't want to name any names, but a former French president, just before we started shooting, I saw it on The Guardian, in jail for 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, 1 second, him? Funds and allocation of funds, and let's not get into such details, but I was like, wow.
I never talk about politics in podcasts. All I'm trying to tell people is this. This is a very, very, very interestingly changing world. And anyone that looks at it may react to it with fear or may see the opportunity.
Are we lucky to be alive at this point? You 58, me 42. Are we lucky?
It depends on what kind of a video gamer you are. If you're a legendary video gamer, you enjoy it when the game is more difficult. You play better than the average gamer when the game is difficult. If you're an average video gamer, you'll probably struggle. If you're a bad video gamer, you'll complain. You'll blame the game for your challenges.
So it's a mindset thing.
In my mind, it is a preparedness. How prepared you are, and mindset. Okay. So the one thing I try to teach any entrepreneur I work with, which I don't as much anymore, but I answer questions when people ask me, is that the top skill in today's world is agility, adaptability. Okay, it's not learning AI. It's not mastering algorithms. It's not this. It's not that. It's agility. It's the game has changed from a chess board to a squash court. Okay, and the biggest skill in today's world, whether in business or in education or in anything really, even in spirituality, is to constantly stand in the middle of the court and observe where the ball is going. Go hit that ball and don't relax. Get back to the center of the court and see where the ball is going to be next. Okay, and I think if people start to live that way with that speed, I'm old. I have never moved faster, ever in my life. I've seen everything. I've never seen so much change. Okay, and if you know the deep tech like I do, the technical infrastructures of what's happening, you have seen nothing. Nothing. Wait to see 2026.
Do you often wish that you didn't know as much as you do?
No. I'm very, 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 very grateful that I'm informed as much as I am. Again, it would be very arrogant to say that I know anything. Okay, this is totally in flux. So I can only take snapshots and see what's happening. But I'm happy to be informed. I'm struggling to stay positive. So I do lots of exercises to make sure that I'm not constantly bombarded by the negativity of the algorithm, if you want. That my spirit is in the right place, my focus in the right place, my objective is always achieved, which is to spread messages that get people prepared. But at the same time, this is the ultimate video game. Again, if you're a video gamer, you're now playing at legendary level. Okay, and believe it or not, when the game is difficult, legendary players, you know what happens? They have the best time ever. They have the best time ever because now it's interesting.
They're surfing.
Now this is the time where we engage.
Yeah. I have 4 questions, and they can be punchy, short answers. I don't want to take up much more time. I think I took almost 3 hours of your time today, Mo, which I'm very thankful for. It's finish the sentences for me, and then we'll close. First one is, I feel most alive when
I'm connected to other humans.
The thing I value most in life is
love.
I love this one. I wish I knew this when I was younger.
That life is a video game.
We keep going back to that.
Trust me, it's the way to navigate.
And what do you want to be remembered for, Mo?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Do me a favor.
But your content will live in perpetuity until that.
I hope it lives forever and it changes the world forever. I want to be remembered for nothing. Trust me, I swear I mean that. I thought about it so deeply. Because if you do it for being remembered, then you meet him and he says, well, you've been remembered. You don't want to be remembered.
So legacy means nothing.
Nothing. I want my soul to be purified enough to go and meet my maker.
And you are not afraid of that day?
Oh, I'm looking forward to that day. Are you kidding me? He's the kindest ever. I've had a remarkable life, Mo. Remarkable. In every possible way. With all the pain, which I think is a lot of blessing. With all the blessings, which I think are interesting tests. And I can guarantee you this entire existence in this physical world is an illusion. It's a simulation. If you're really, really a legendary player, you don't play to win this level. Think about that.
This has been like a life lesson of an episode, honestly. I was looking forward to it for maybe the first time I reached out to you 2 years ago. And it did not disappoint, at least not in my perspective. Maybe I'm biased of my own podcast, but having you on the show, this was the best episode we've ever shot.
Oh my God, thank you.
And
I felt that I went over tangents all the time. Thank you for saying that.
I appreciate you. And I'm really proud, and I think the team that are here, know how sincere I am when I'm saying this. I'm proud that we have this kind of representation from our region, from our very much misconstrued region.
Yeah.
You are, sir, a source of soft power to the world and all the big ass pods you've been on all the big ones. And whenever I used to see Mo Gawdat speak, it's like you on your own, you don't need me to tell you this, but you have changed what people thought about our region. So, and I thank you for that.
Thank you so much for saying that. I struggled with that for a very long time in my life because, of course, as you can imagine, as I worked in corporate America, a lot of people were like, yeah, how can you mix with those people? What do you do? They're wonderful people. And by the way, if we can just convince them that we're good people too, imagine all that can happen. Imagine if we show up in the world with a smile. Imagine if people really, really, really loved you and then you said, I'm Saudi, I'm Egyptian, I'm Tunisian, I'm Emirati. And how that would affect the way that they think about the world.
Yeah. Sometimes I resent borders.
Oh my God.
I wish the globe was just one
Part
big
of
country.
the 7 stories.
Yeah. Which I'm going to tune into.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Mo, from the bottom of my heart. I really appreciate you being on this.
You're the best. Thank you for having me.
It was a life lesson. Thank you, sir.
so much.
أيها الإخوة المشاهدون السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.